Hello, Void Experience members. Get a grip of reality. Episode 2. What shows up when you call out? You light the candles. You time it perfectly. Saturday, Saturn hour. You speak the words Agrippa laid out 500 years ago. You're invoking Saturn. Structure, discipline, boundaries, time. And something answers. But it's not Saturn. It's something else. Something that feels wrong. Heavy in a way that makes your skin crawl. Ancient in a way that has nothing to do with wisdom. And it's here because you open the door. Here's what nobody tells you about planetary invocation. If you call for Saturn and something else shows up, that's not a mistake in the ritual. That's a diagnostic. Something in your consciousness, your entanglement structure, your unresolved patterns, your hidden contradictions, resonated with what arrived instead of what you called. You don't get invaded by random entities. You get exactly what you're broadcasting at frequencies you didn't know you were using. Today we're talking about what happens when the wrong thing shows up, why it's always the right thing for where you actually are, and what that reveals about how consciousness generates reality. This is where Agrippa's system stops being theory and becomes mirror. Act 1. You're not summoning, you're tuning in. Let's get something straight. When you invoke a planetary intelligence, you're not summoning an external entity to come visit you from across the cosmos. You're tuning your localized consciousness to a specific frequency that already exists in the field. Think of it like a radio. Saturn isn't a broadcast tower billions of miles away sending signals to Earth. Saturn the planet and Saturn the frequency are the same pattern expressed at different scales. Physical mass in orbit and consciousness pattern in the field. When you invoke Saturn, you're turning your dial to the Saturn frequency. Structure, limitation, time, endings, death, the qualities Saturn represents. But here's where it gets a bit frightening. What if your dial is broken? What if you think you're tuning to Saturn, but your internal circuitry, your unresolved trauma, your unconscious beliefs, your hidden fears, is actually broadcasting on a completely different frequency? You intend Saturn. You speak the Saturn invocation. You use Saturn correspondences. But your consciousness is screaming something else entirely. And the field responds to what you're actually broadcasting, not what you think you're requesting. This is why two people can perform identical rituals and get completely different results. It's not about the words or the timing or the candles. Those are stabilizers, anchors, tools for coherence. The actual signal comes from your entanglement structure, your phenomenal state, what you're resonating at the deepest level. If something shows up that wasn't invited, it's because some part of you was calling it all along. Act 2. The entity that shouldn't be there. So let's say you're invoking Saturn. Saturday. Saturn hour. Black candle. Lead, if you can get it. Myrrh incense. You speak the words. And what arrives feels off, not structured, not wise, not like the stern teacher bringing necessary lessons. It feels predatory, hungry, like it's been waiting for you to open this door. First instinct, panic. You fucked up the ritual. You said something wrong. You accidentally summoned a demon. Wrong. You summoned exactly what you're entangled with. Here's the question you need to ask. What part of me resonates with this instead of Saturn? Maybe you think you want structure, but deep down you're terrified of it. Structure means accountability. Discipline means facing what you've been avoiding. Boundaries mean saying no to things that feel good but aren't serving you. So you say you want Saturn, but your unconscious is running from Saturn as fast as it can. And that fear, that resistance, that's broadcasting on a completely different frequency. Predatory entities don't break down your door. They respond to invitations you didn't know you were sending. Or maybe it's not fear. Maybe it's unresolved rage. You think you're ready for Saturn's lessons about time and mortality, but you're still furious about something that happened years ago. That rage is loud in your field, louder than your conscious intention. And rage attracts entities that feed on rage. Not because they're evil cosmic villains, but because that's the frequency match, like calls to like. Or maybe, and this is the hardest one, you have a pattern of self-sabotage so deep you don't even recognize it anymore. You genuinely want growth and structure, but every time you get close to a breakthrough, something in you yanks on the emergency brake. That pattern is an entity too, not external, not separate from you. It's a semi-autonomous structure in your own consciousness that has its own survival agenda. And when you open the door to Saturn, that internal entity sees an opportunity. It mimics the form you expect while doing the exact opposite of what you need. The wrong entity showing up is a diagnostic tool. It's showing you exactly where your entanglement structure is misaligned with your conscious intentions. Act 3. You're creating your reality, all of it. Here's where we get into the deep physics. You're not just observing reality. You're generating it through your phenomenal experience. Every thought, every emotion, every unconscious belief creates entanglement structure. An entanglement structure constitutes space-time geometry. When you invoke a planetary intelligence, you're not asking an external power to intervene in your life. You're reorganizing your own entanglement patterns to align with a specific geometric configuration. If your conscious intention says Saturn, but your unconscious structure says chaos, avoidance, self-destruction, then the geometric pattern you actually generate reflects the stronger signal. Consciousness doesn't lie. Your entanglement structure broadcasts what's actually there, not what you wish was there. This is why magical practice is diagnostic. You think you're working with external forces, but you're actually getting a real-time readout of your internal configuration. The entities that show up, whether they're the ones you called or the ones you didn't expect, are reflecting your actual state back to you. If something predatory arrives, ask, where am I predatory toward myself? Where am I consuming my own energy, my own potential, my own future? If something chaotic arrives when you called for structure, ask, what am I refusing to organize? What truth am I avoiding that would require me to change? If something seductive arrives when you called for discipline, ask, what am I using pleasure to avoid? Where am I choosing comfort over growth? You are creating your reality, not in the shallow manifestation guru sense, where you visualize a parking space and the universe delivers. In the actual physics sense, your consciousness generates entanglement structure. Entanglement structure constitutes geometric reality, and geometric reality manifests as the material circumstances and encounters you experience. If you don't like what's showing up, the question isn't, how do I banish this entity? The question is, what in me is generating the entanglement pattern that this entity perfectly matches? Act 4. What to do when the wrong thing arrives. Okay, you've invoked Saturn. Something else showed up. You understand it's diagnostic. Now what? First, do not panic. Fear broadcasts on frequencies that attract exactly the kind of entities you don't want more of. Second, do not immediately banish. This thing, whatever it is showing you something important about your structure. Third, ask it why it's here, not out loud like you're talking to a ghost, but as a genuine question into the void. What part of my consciousness are you reflecting? What am I not seeing about myself? And then listen. You might get a clear answer. You might get a feeling, an image, a sudden recognition of a pattern you've been running your whole life. Or you might get nothing immediately, and then 3 days later, you'll be in the shower and suddenly understand exactly what that entity was showing you. Fourth, thank it. I'm serious. This uninvited guest just gave you information about your entanglement structure you couldn't access any other way. It showed you where your conscious intentions and your actual resonance are misaligned. That's valuable. That's the difference between stumbling in the dark and seeing the terrain. Fifth, close the door properly. Just because you're grateful for the diagnostic doesn't mean you keep the frequency open. I understand what you've shown me. This work is complete. I release this connection. Return to your realm. I close this door. Simple, direct, no drama. Sixth, do the actual work. Whatever the entity revealed, the fear, the rage, the self-sabotage pattern, that's what you work on. Not through more invocations, through honest examination of your entanglement structure. Therapy, shadow work, sitting with the uncomfortable truth about yourself until you can actually change the underlying pattern. Because here's the thing, if you don't change the pattern, the same entity will show up next time. Not because it's stalking you, but because you're still broadcasting the same frequency. Act 5. The Saturn you actually need. Eventually, if you do the work, you'll invoke Saturn again. Same day, same hour, same correspondences. And this time what arrives will feel different. Still heavy, still serious, still the teacher you'd rather avoid, but not predatory, not wrong. Because now your entanglement structure actually matches your conscious intention. You want structure, and you're not running from it anymore. You're ready for discipline, and you're not sabotaging yourself to avoid it. You need the lesson about time and mortality, and you're not drowning it in distractions. And Saturn, the actual frequency, the real pattern, can finally reach you because you cleared the interference. This is what Agrippa understood, that modern occultists miss. The planets don't care about your ritual performance. They respond to your actual state. If your state is fragmented, conflicted, broadcasting contradictory signals, you get chaos. If your state is aligned, coherent, genuinely resonating with what you're invoking, you get the intelligence you called for. And sometimes the path from chaos to coherence requires meeting the things you didn't want to see. The uninvited guests are guides too, just not the kind you'd choose. Next time you invoke planetary intelligence and something unexpected shows up, don't assume you failed. You succeeded in getting a completely accurate diagnostic of your actual entanglement structure. The question isn't, how do I do the ritual correctly? The question is, what is this showing me about myself that I couldn't see before? You're creating your reality, all of it, the beautiful synchronicities and the uncomfortable encounters. Both are reflections of the same source, your consciousness generating geometric structure through phenomenal experience. Agrippa gave you the map, but you have to be willing to see where you actually are on it, not where you wish you were. Next episode, Angelic Hierarchies, the 9 orders of intelligence Agrippa describes, how they map to dimensional architecture, and why some of them feel like allies, while others feel like auditors examining your books. For now, try invoking one planet this week. Pay attention to what actually shows up versus what you expected. Document it. Sit with it. Ask what it's reflecting. The planets aren't out there. They're frequency patterns in the consciousness field that generates reality. And you're part of that field, whether you know it or not. I'm Amy Rossi, and you have been listening to The Void Experiment. If this work resonates with you, please consider joining our community and leaving a comment or subscribe for more esoteric content. We are just beginning to form the void. Thank you for listening. Oh, and please hit the like button. It helps the channel so much. Until next time, be well.